Hello everybody, my name is Levi, and I like to buy video games. Probably too much. Here's part 3. Blech. So I'm going to try a few new things with this series. Previously I've just kind of thrown a screenshot up here and held the box up briefly, done a really zoomed out camera so everything's a bit blurry because my C920 isn't the greatest camera ever. So today I'm trying something a bit different with the format. Hopefully easier to edit and easier to look at. So let's give it a go, and I'm actually going to be doing, normally I do it Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, other, but this time we're doing it backwards, because why not mix it up a bit. So, first game I can't really show because it's very much integrated into its existing location, but I got Metroid on the NES, which I've already played and beaten it twice, but I've never actually owned a physical copy of it on the NES. I've been looking to get one, but I never found one that was in the condition I really wanted it to be in, because I've been actually decking out my PC to have a bit of a Nintendo theme to it. So I have, as you can see, because there's probably a picture on screen, I have like little Mario, Link, an NES controller, an NES Zapper, and all that in there. And before that I just had Duck Hunt in there. But I really wanted to represent Metroid since it's one of my favorite franchises of all time. And I finally found a cartridge, and that is now a part of the setup. I still have to figure out all the LEDs in my PC, because right now they're not the greatest strips ever, but I'm really happy with how this looks at the moment, and I would actually like to give a special thanks to this, for this and one other game that's going to be on this list, to Gaming Wisconsinably, who I've been in contact with, and he was selling a few games, so I actually got Metroid and another game you'll see off this list from him. Actually, he's also the one who got me Skies of Arcadia Legends from the previous video, so a very cool channel. You'll want to check it out. A lot of SNES stuff, mostly from what I've seen, but there's definitely other stuff there. On to the next console in order, the Game Boy Color. I got a single game for the Game Boy Color. I got Gex Enter the Gecko, which if you saw the last video, I actually had this on the N64, but now I found it on the Game Boy Color, because I don't know, I want to try it out. I don't know what I'm getting into necessarily. Another game I found was The Incredibles on Game Boy Advance. This was one in a little bin that was like 50 cents per game or whatever, and I picked it up because the person I was with said it sounded interesting, so somehow that was enough for me to consider buying it, so I guess I'm easy to manipulate. I don't really know what I'm getting into with that at all, aside from the branding. This one doesn't actually have a label on it. I had to get it out of the shell. So I actually kind of made my own, but this is apparently, I don't know if it's a sequel or if it's a port or what it is, but it is an Earthworm Jim game, and I got this one for free. So I don't really care if it doesn't have a label, and Earthworm Jim has been a series it seemed interesting to me, but I'm also very unsure what to expect going into it, because it just seems really crazy, but I think that's kind of their whole thing they're going for. Next is, actually I'll skip over that one now. I'm actually going to try something new with this. I'm going to save my personal favorites for last, which I kind of did for like one game in the last one, but now I'm going to do it for a few. I got Starfox Adventures, which it's actually not in the greatest shape, but normally I find this game for like $20 to $30 or whatever, but at Con Bravo I found it for $6, and I don't think it has a manual. It doesn't have a manual, but it's still got the game in the case, so that was enough for me. I already tested it, it works. Everyone's very much told me that it is a very bad game, and every time I look into that, I'm actually not sure if it is a bad game or not, because from what I can tell, it had a bad reputation because of how they threw one brand on top of something that Rare was making, so that automatically was kind of an unfortunate thing to put Rare through, but it was also an unfortunate thing to put Star Fox through, because then it didn't end up being a traditional Star Fox game. So neither of the ideas of the game originally really came through, but it's still like a game that looks kind of like a Zelda game to some extent, and I'm interested in seeing what it has to offer, because from what I've seen, it actually looks like it could be an interesting game. It looks fun enough for me, but a lot of people have interesting opinions on that, mostly based on the branding and the licensing, more so than the actual game itself. So I'm interested to see what the game actually has to offer as a single contained experience. Onto the Switch, I got 2 games. The first one is Rayman Legends Definitive Edition, which this is a game I actually had in my poll for Twitch games, and then I found out that since I don't have Xbox Live Gold anymore, I no longer own it on the Xbox One. So I picked it up on Switch. Now I can play it anywhere, and I can easily just pass on a Joy-Con to a friend. It's also the Definitive Edition, which probably means something cool. It's a very... It looks super fun, especially the music levels, but I haven't played a Rayman game to date, and I'm very excited to get into this one, because it's got all kinds of bright colors, cool music, the gameplay looks fun and fast-paced, it looks like it's as much or as little of a collectathon as you really want it to be. So much about the game has me very excited when I get around to it. Is there anything I can really say about Mario Kart 8 Deluxe? I've been very unsure about getting this for the longest time because I already owned it on Wii U. Sure, it's worse on Wii U, and like it's got the broken battle mode. I guess it's really easy to hold first place once you get to it or something. It's got less items, but ultimately I was fine just having Mario Kart 8 already rather than spending $60 to get it again, because even now, this game is still hard to find for less than like $55 or whatever, or $50 or whatever. It's still very much holding its price for a game that's about 5 years old, or 4 years old now. So, the reason I did end up getting it is because I was looking for a game to play when I met friends at Con Bravo, and that was the one everyone was like, this is the game we're most likely going to play. This is probably the game we're going to play, so I just kind of decided to pick it up now. I haven't actually started it at all yet, but I'm interested in seeing if there's anything that noticeably different, but ultimately I'll probably wait until I have friends over, and then maybe we'll live stream it or something. On to Sega Consoles. There's another one I got from Gaming Wisconsin, I believe. This is Aladdin. This is Aladdin for the Sega Genesis, which I'm not sure really what all the differences between the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo version are, but this is back when Capcom made really solid license games, and I'm very excited to get into it. But yeah, it just looks cool. I don't have many Genesis games with cases, actually, so I'm very interested in getting into this, because I've heard it has a very good reputation, particularly the Genesis version. I'm not sure why that version specifically, but I'm interested in getting into it. Another game that I've heard incredibly mixed opinions on is Ecco the Dolphin, just the franchise. I got the one that's the Tides of Time. I got this one super cheap at a local game store. The series seems very unusual from what I've been able to pick up. It's generally a colorful, happy game where you go around as a dolphin and do whatever stuff with your friends or something. But apparently it's got really dark and crazy and creepy undertones. And it gets very... how did one of my friends explain it? It basically turns into a drug trip of a game. I don't really know what that means, and I don't want to look it up because then I'll get spoiled. But I'm actually kind of interested in seeing what comes of this, because as many good and bad opinions as I've heard about it, the fact that I've heard about it that much when it's already a game that's that old, it must mean it's at least worth checking out. And one other thing, it's not a game, but someone's probably wondering. I finally got the Con Bravo shirt for Family Jewels and his show, as well as all the other ones there, these were limited run shirts that you could only get in person at the show. And I know someone's probably going to ask about it, so I'm just pointing it out. On to the final Sega game, I think. Yes. I got Crazy Taxi for the Sega Genesis. I got Crazy Taxi for the Sega Dreamcast, which I've heard a lot about this game. I've never really known much about it. It's like an arcade racer, I think, where basically you're a taxi driver and everything's just cranked up to 11. Everything's super fast-paced, everything's super crazy. The more tricks you do, the better payout you get for your taxi ride or something like that. And when I was at the store and they had this, my friend Jacob, who was with me, was very interested in this. He knows a lot more about Dreamcast than I do, and he was very interested in me picking this one up. And we already played like 10-20 minutes of it, and it looks super fun. I can't wait to do more with that. Then on to PlayStation consoles. I got Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops Plus. I don't know if Plus means anything different, or if that's just the normal version of the game. But with this, I now own every single Metal Gear Solid game, which I've still only played 3 on the 3DS, which I can't show because my copy is with Carlos still. But I liked the game enough that I went out and bought the entire franchise, and this was the only one I was missing, except for Metal Gear Solid Acid, which I did almost buy, like, even later last year, but then I looked up what it was, and I don't really consider it a Metal Gear game after hearing what exactly it is, so not sure on that one, but with this, I now have the entire franchise, and I'm super excited to get into it. And I'm actually looking into getting the proper things to be able to capture PSP gameplay. I got a single game for the PlayStation 1, or at least that's what I'll show for now. This is 007 Tomorrow Never... Oh, dies. 007 Tomorrow Never Dies. I've played one of the 007 games. I don't really know what it is. On the original Xbox with John. I think it was GoldenEye. It might be something else. But we played that when we were kids, and that was one of my earlier gaming experiences, and I thought that was fun, and although I don't know much about the James Bond series at all, I was interested in picking this one up, because when I was looking over the back of the box, a lot of the screenshots and things that it was saying it had seemed very ambitious for a PlayStation 1 title, and I'm interested in trying it out just for that. I don't know if it's going to be any good, or if it's going to have anything particularly creative or inspired within it, but I'm very interested in seeing what this franchise has to offer on the PlayStation 1, because even just like on the back, they've got like 4 different screenshots of completely different gameplay styles, and I'm interested in seeing what they did with that on such a primitive console, I guess you could say. And actually we'll follow it up with this one. Then I also got 007 Everything or Nothing, which when I actually was looking into the 007 games after purchase of Tomorrow Never Dies, I started looking into them because I was like, well, are all of these games just considered subpar? Am I remembering them as better games than they are? And so I looked it up, and everywhere I went, Everything or Nothing was a game that everyone was saying, the games are pretty good, but there's like the 3 or 4 big ones. And Everything or Nothing is still leagues above even like whatever the second best is. And that's just what I heard everywhere. I guess they've got all the original voice actors or something, and it ties in with the movie really well. I don't know, but I guess this one is a really good and the best of the 007 games so far, and I'll see what it has to offer, possibly with a friend. This one, I don't know. This one will get some people to unsubscribe, but it was $2. It's fine. I got Devil May Cry 2. Yeah. I don't really... I'm not sure if we're actually going to play this, but me and Chris have been talking about playing through the Devil May Cry series. And I've already got 1, 3, the special edition, the fixed one, and then I was kind of missing 2 and whatever the reboot series was. So we were already going to do 1 and 3 for sure, but when we saw how cheap 2 was, we figured we'd pick it up. From what I can tell, everybody hates this game. I don't know why, but everybody hates this game a lot, from what I can tell. and we still are interested in trying it, because we're going to go through the series anyway. Why not stop at 2? It doesn't mean we have to complete 2 or like really take it seriously, but we're at least curious about why people dislike 2, and we'd rather do that by playing the game than watching YouTube videos about it or something like that. Then, Jak and Daxter 3, or Jak 3. I already have the first game, second game, and spin-off on PSP, and I really am interested in this series, even if it does change between gameplay after the first game. But I'm very interested in seeing what this series has to offer, because it's looked very interesting from what I've seen, and it's definitely one of the series I'm most excited to get into, and I had not owned Jak 3 yet, and now I own the entire series, I think. Originally, I actually wanted to get it on the PlayStation Vita collection, and then, well, yeah. If you know, you know. If you don't know, you probably don't want to know. Just don't get it on the PlayStation Vita. This is a game. Well, they all are games, except for the shirt. So this is Timesplitters 2. I have been very interested in getting into the Timesplitters series for the longest time now. It's just been, it seemed like a very funny game series to get into. That'd be a lot of fun to goof around and mess around with it, and just see what all they do with the gameplay and the plot and the characters. For some reason, I've seen Timesplitters 2 on the shelf of game stores like 5 or 6 times. I've never seen the first game, the third game, I think there's a fourth game, I haven't seen that either. I've only ever come across the second game, and it's always on GameCube for some reason, which I don't know how interested I am in playing a first-person shooter on GameCube, even if my favorite 2 games of all time are first-person shooters on the GameCube. But I wasn't as interested in trying it on those platforms, especially since GameCube, just games being on GameCube automatically makes them like double the price of other platforms for some reason. I guess Nintendo's just popular, or Retro Nintendo. But I'm very interested in getting into this one, so maybe I'll do it with a friend. I don't know if it has co-op campaign. Actually, I can check now. 1 to 4 players. I don't know if that does anything for single player campaign, but it's got versus mode, and that's always fun. This is a game that I know about due to Jacob, who was the one who convinced me to get Crazy Taxi, and then, well, everybody's favorite, or least favorite, I don't know. There's probably people who don't like him. Donkey, and I decided to get Enter the Matrix, which is apparently a very broken game. I know nothing about the source material, but apparently this is a very good game for just laughing at how bad it is. So we picked it up for like $5. And onto the Xbox 360. Onto the Xbox platforms. I got Pac-Man World 3, which I have been incredibly excited to play Pac-Man World 2. I got that in the last pick-up video or two, and that was due to a friend of mine online and from the Discord server and stuff like that, named Van. And he could not stop singing the praises of Pac-Man World 2 for a while until I finally caved in and bought it. Then I found Pac-Man World 3 for a very cheap price, and he's very concerned that I bought this game. He's given me a few reasons that I won't get into, but if I'm that interested in playing 2, I think that I will get $3 worth of content out of the third game. Like, it can be pretty bad, and I will probably still get what I deem to be $3 worth of content out of this. And I don't really know how it could be that bad, but I'm still going to try it anyway. On to the Xbox 360, I got Condemned 2 Bloodshot. This is a horror game. I have heard about the Condemned name before, and that it is a very good horror series. That's about all I know. It has like the same cover as... Actually, let me go grab it. I also picked it up because I thought this was funny. It matches Resident Evil Revelations. Oh wait, I'm blocking the mic. Can you hear me still? But, I don't know. Sounds fun. I've heard the name of the franchise around several times. I don't know what I'm getting into with it. Another one I got from Com Bravo, this is Vanquish, which is a game I've been interested in getting for the longest time. It's looked super cool. I've heard that it's actually a really short game, unfortunately, but it's basically, from what I can tell, as you can see, he's like skidding around. From what I can tell, basically it's just a super, super fast-paced shooter where everything is very much over-the-top sci-fi, and the gimmick with your character or whatever is that he can just move super fast because, like, he's got rockets on his back, and, like, when he sits down on the ground or something, he's got, like, rollerblades or something on him, so he can, like, jet all over the place, and it's a very fast-paced, kind of like arcade shooter, and it looked very fun, but even to date, it's still been a somewhat pricey game to find, but I only found it for $10 there, which is like 7 or 8 in Canadian. Or in American, or in US. And lastly, for the 360, I got Fear 3, or Fthrar. Something like that. Me and Ezra did a video on Fear 1 a while back, and that was a super fun game, sort of. I don't know. We enjoyed talking, and making fun of the game for like 10 minutes, and then we just kind of talked about video games casually, and most of that episode just turned into a podcast. So, as excited as we were about the game itself, it felt very dated, and we were interested in seeing what the franchise did from that point onward. And we came across this one really cheap at a pawn shop somewhat nearby, and we decided, well, if the game series is good enough to get 3 games, let's see what the third game did. Even though, a lot of times in trilogies, it's the second game that's great, and the third game that screws it all up again. But we'll still see what it has to offer. We're very interested in trying the franchise again. Then, PC games, which I have my index card for because I'm creative, I guess. No, not really. So, for PC, I got the first Deus Ex game. This has interested me for a while because Deus Ex Human Revolution was a game that caught my interest a long time ago, and then eventually I got it with Xbox Live on the 360, and I tried it out, and I don't know, for some reason I couldn't get into it, but I was still very much interested in the Deus Ex franchise, and then I kind of looked into it a bit more and found out that the original Deus Ex from like the 90s, apparently, or maybe it's even like the year 2000, it looked completely different, and it was, I don't know, it just appeared to be a very fascinating game to me. And then I was talking to someone else online, Liam or Ramim. He was recommending it to me, and he did a cover or two on it. And I asked him, what do you think of this? And he said, get it. You won't regret it. It's awesome. And so I did. So now I get to see what Deus Ex, the original, is like. Then another one. This is something that the Popstar dude told me to get over a year ago. And I was just kind of unsure about it. I was buying other games at the time or something. Some dumb excuse I probably had. And I finally caved in and I got Hollow Knight, which from what I've played, I enjoy Castlevania and I love Metroid. And admittedly, I haven't played too many games that are just in the Metroidvania category. And so I've been unsure where to start with it. And then I saw Hollow Knight. It just looked super cool. And then I heard the soundtrack. I saw the art style, and it's very intriguing. So I had to pick it up. I really am looking forward to trying out Hollow Knight. Another one that probably no one, or maybe one or two people watching have heard of. Origami. Not origami, it's with an A. But this is, how do you put it? It's kind of like Tenchu, I guess you could say. But it is a much more modern take on a stealth assassination game where you play as a ninja that can kind of manipulate light or something like that. Basically, you have to stay out of the light, but when you're in shadow, you can actually like turn invisible, I think, something like that. I watched a little bit of like a Game Grumps series on it, and I stopped after 5 minutes because I knew I had to own the game. I couldn't just watch a series on it. I had to own this game. And it just looks super fun, and I'm very excited to see what all this game has to offer, because it looked like exactly the type of game that I'd like. So, I'm very interested in getting into Origami. Then 2 more games. These 2, I literally know nothing about them other than their name, and I guess the place I heard about them. So I was recently on with all of the driving to and from Con Bravo. I re-listened to the entire Wowie Talk podcast, which was Insane in the Ring Music, Sab Irene, Julia Henderson, Ropanaganti, and Terrace Music. And usually not all 5 of them in every episode, but there was one episode where they were going over games that they really like, or games that aren't appreciated enough, or something along those lines. And 2 games that they mentioned were To the Moon and The Longest Journey. I don't really know anything about either of them, except I know that To the Moon is a very plot-centric game, and that's most of what I know. I think The Longest Journey is a point-and-click adventure game, which is a series that I've had an interest in, but I haven't really explored much. And then those are the last 2 Steam games. I really don't know what I'm getting into with those, but they were recommended by people that I look up to, and I'm interested in trying the types of games that I don't normally get into. So I'm really interested in seeing what those have to offer. And then the 3 I saved for last, because I didn't just want to go over this with all of the games back to back to back or something like that. I wanted to find my top picks and go over those in a special light, or an extra segment, I don't know. So, I got Diddy Kong Racing, which I've actually streamed previously on the channel, and most of you probably think I own it already, but I was borrowing it off Connor because you can't really get demos of games like this, or if you... I don't know if N64 really had many demo cards, or if there were any other than, like, something in a store. So I borrowed the game off Connor, not because I wanted to play it to completion or have it all the time to play with friends or whatever, but I just was very interested in trying out the game. It's a rare game that I have not gotten the opportunity to play previously, and I was very interested in trying it out. And so I played it for a little bit, and I knew very quickly that it was a game I had to own. I didn't want to be borrowing it or something. I wanted to own the game, play it whenever I want, not worry about returning it. Just, I can play it to my heart's content and always have it for whenever friends are over, or play through the whole campaign, make a bunch of save states or save files and get 100% like 5 times over. I'm very excited to get more out of Diddy Kong Racing. And I don't know. Most of what I've said on the game was in that stream. And this one, I don't know. I got 2 games left. Each one is very special for a different reason. I don't know which one to save for the finale. Okay, I'll do this one first. This is Star Ocean, the second story. It's very weird for me to say that, but chances are none of you have any idea what this game is. So, when I was originally looking for games on the PlayStation 1, because I first got my PlayStation 1 like 3 years ago or something like that, maybe even longer, and when I first was looking into games for it, all of the popular ones, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, Final Fantasy games, they all came up. And I was interested in a lot of them, not as interested in others. And then I was searching for literally like months every now and then, just searching and just trying to find games that caught my interest. I found out just how many great RPGs are on the platform. And this one... And I was just trying to narrow it down, like, what interests do I have in a JRPG? What interests do I find a bit draining in an RPG? What things are, like, a must-buy reason for an RPG to, like, make it to my wish list or my shopping cart or whatever? And going over every single one, The Legend of Dragoon was probably the one that checked the most boxes other than this. And then this one far outdid that by a lot. So this was like the big RPG that I really wanted to get on the PlayStation 1. It's from a fairly obscure series because the first game released as a Japan exclusive, and then this one came out in Japan and the States, but I believe it was either right around the time of a Final Fantasy release or even like so late in the console that the PS2 was coming out. So it didn't really get sales, it didn't get much notoriety, and eventually the first and second game were remade on PSP, possibly better, possibly worse versions, I don't really know, but I really wanted to get it on PS1, and this game is not easy to find. I've never seen it in person until owning it, and everywhere I asked, everywhere I looked, everywhere I called, checking eBay, it just wasn't showing up. It was like the game didn't exist in the for sale market. And then at Con Bravo, they had one copy, and that was like the first thing I did when I got to Con Bravo. I was looking around at all the gaming stuff, and then this one guy just had like a little box of PS1 games, and this was in there. And he wanted $45 for it, and that was in Canadian, so that's more like a little over $30 here. And I would have been happy getting like scratched just the discs or whatever, but this one's like the full case, manuals, everything in like great condition, and I'm so happy to finally have this, because it's just a game I almost thought I would never have, because it was just so far out of my reach most often, because I couldn't find it for sale anywhere. And if it did go for sale, it was probably going to be like 60 or 80 bucks or who knows what. But I managed to find it, and even if it was like 60 or 80 bucks, I would have been happy to pay it. And they had it at a great deal. Maybe he didn't know what he had, or maybe it's just easier to come across in Canada. I don't know. But I am so happy to finally have this game. It's interested me so much since I first found out about it. And then the last one. This is it? This is probably the most expensive game I own now, which I still paid about $70 for it, but I found Medieval 2, which Medieval 1 and 2 were some of the PS1 games I was the most excited about getting. I heard about Medieval 1 from Cataricus, and it looked incredibly interesting to me. I was hooked and intrigued right away when I found out about Medieval 1. And then I found out that it had a sequel. It was obscure. It wasn't remastered on the PSP like the first game was. You had to either emulate it or get it on the PlayStation 1. And finding it on the PlayStation 1 is like impossible. It's better known than Star Ocean Second Story, and it's shown up for sale on like eBay and stuff before, but it's not an easy game to find. It's always really expensive, and it's just a game I never thought I'd have any chance of getting because of just how far out of reach it was financially for me. And I was actually considering getting into emulators just for this game. And then I found it at Con Bravo, right alongside Star Ocean. And there was no way I was saying no to it. I'm always looking around, and whenever I see it for sale anywhere or whatever, it's just going to be the disc or something, and it's like $100, or maybe if you're lucky, $100. And even then, that doesn't show up often. The case in the manual, that's huge, and I found the whole thing for what is roughly $50 American, so like less than half its value, and it's just a game that I've been super excited to play, and I've never thought that I'd have the opportunity to own it because of just how far out of reach it was. Like, this is almost like on Skies of Arcadia level. Not quite, but almost. For me. And now I just can't believe that I have this and Skies of Arcadia in my collection. And I'm super excited for the time when I get to try out these games. That was all. It seems like it was actually a longer video than normal, even though it probably had less games than normal. I just was so excited about a few of those. But thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope you like the new format. I normally spend a lot of time in editing trying to find these screenshots, and then I get spoiled on things I don't want to know about from the game. So I was hoping that doing it like this, because the aspect ratio you're viewing right now, this is the actual aspect ratio my webcam records in, so hopefully the image looks a little bit clearer. And also I got to use this space on the side to show like close-ups of the box art. So I think that's cool. It's easier for me. I think it gets a better image, and I'm wondering what you guys think. If I do future game pickup videos, do you like this format, or do you want kind of like the super zoomed out camera that's a bit blurry, but it's got little screenshots in the corner? So let me know what you think. I'm very interested to hear what you guys have to say about a few of these games, because I'm very excited to talk about pretty much any of them, except this. What am I supposed to say about this? Either way, see you in the next video, guys.